A tailored blazer, a PhD from MIT, and a 10-figure acquisition deal weren't enough to get Dr. Serafina Hayes past the front desk. To the man in the corner office, she was just another black woman who didn't belong. He looked her up and down, a sneer twisting his lips, and uttered the 5 words that would detonate his entire career. "You can wait outside, sweetheart." He thought he was putting a delivery person in her place. He had no idea he was talking to his new boss. What happened in the next 60 seconds was a corporate execution. But the story doesn't end there. Because when you kick a hornet's nest, you better be prepared for the swarm, and the karma that follows is far more brutal than just losing a job. Stay tuned. The lobby of Origin Innovations was a cathedral of corporate indifference. Polished marble floors reflected the cold, recessed lighting, and the air conditioning hummed a low, monotonous drone, seemingly engineered to chill the very soul. It was a space designed to intimidate, to remind every visitor of their insignificance in the face of the company's monolithic success. On this crisp Tuesday morning, Dr. Serafina Hayes stood in the center of that calculated chill, and she was utterly, deliberately invisible. She was dressed in a simple dark gray pantsuit, impeccably tailored, but devoid of any ostentatious branding. Her hair was pulled back in a neat professional bun, and her only jewelry was a thin, silver watch on her wrist. There was no Louis Vuitton handbag, no Cartier bracelet. She carried only a plain leather portfolio. To the casual observer, she could have been a mid-level consultant, a job applicant, or perhaps, as the receptionist clearly assumed, a courier. "Can I help you?" The receptionist, a woman with a nameplate that read Brenda and a face set in a permanent state of mild disapproval, didn't look up from her screen. Her nails, a garish shade of pink, clicked rhythmically on her keyboard. "Yes," Serafina said, her voice calm and even. "I'm here for the 9:01 a.m. senior management meeting." Brenda finally lifted her gaze, her eyes doing a quick, dismissive scan of Serafina from head to toe. The appraisal took less than a second. The verdict was clear in the slight purse of her lips. "Not important." "Name?" Brenda asked, her tone flat. "Dr. Serafina Hayes." Brenda's fingers flew across the keyboard. A frown deepened the lines on her forehead. "I don't have Serafina Hayes on the list for the management meeting. That's for VPs and above only. Are you sure you're in the right place? Maybe you're here for the junior marketing sync in conference room C? Down the hall, to the left." She gestured vaguely with a pink-tipped finger, her attention already returning to her screen. "I'm quite sure," Serafina replied, a hint of steel entering her voice. "It's on the 40th floor, the executive boardroom." This got Brenda's attention again. The 40th floor was the realm of the gods at Origin. She looked at Serafina with open suspicion now. "Nobody gets to the 40th floor without an appointment and an escort, and you're not on the list. Who are you with?" "I'm not with anyone," Serafina said, maintaining her composure. The lobby doors swished open, and a wave of boisterous male laughter rolled in. 3 men in expensive tailored suits strode through, exuding an aura of ownership. They were the apex predators of this corporate jungle. In the lead was a tall, silver-haired man with the confident swagger of someone who had never been told no in his life. This was Marcus Thorne, the chief operating officer of Origin Innovations, and in his own mind, the heir apparent to the CEO throne. He was flanked by David Brown, the CFO, and Robert Gallagher, the head of R&D. They bypassed the reception desk without a glance, heading straight for the executive elevators. Marcus, however, caught sight of Serafina standing patiently. His eyes narrowed, not in curiosity, but in annoyance, as if her mere presence was an inconvenience. He paused his conversation and gestured towards Serafina with his chin, addressing Brenda without looking at her. "Brenda, what's this? Is the new courier service already making deliveries this early?" Brenda, flustered by the attention of the COO, stammered, "No, Mr. Thorne. This woman says she's here for the senior management meeting. She's not on the list. I was just telling her." Marcus Thorne turned his full attention to Serafina. He took in her simple attire, her dark skin, and the leather portfolio. His lips curled into a condescending smirk. It was a look Serafina had seen 1,000 times before in boardrooms, in investor meetings, and even in her PhD program at MIT. It was the look of a man who had already calculated her worth and found it wanting. He didn't see a woman who had built a private equity firm from the ground up. He didn't see the chemical engineer with a dozen patents to her name. He didn't see the strategist who had just spent the last 6 months orchestrating the $1.2 billion acquisition of the very company he worked for. He saw a black woman who was out of her depth. "The management meeting," he said, his voice dripping with mock politeness that was more insulting than any slur. He let out a short, derisive chuckle that his lieutenants, David and Robert, dutifully echoed. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. That's a closed-door, C-suite meeting." He took a step closer, lowering his voice as if sharing a helpful secret. "Listen, whatever package you have, you can leave it with Brenda. If you're looking for the catering entrance, it's around the back of the building." He then gave her a dismissive pat on the shoulder, a gesture of profound disrespect. He turned to walk away, then paused as if a final thought struck him. He looked back at her, his eyes cold and final. "Actually, don't clutter up the lobby. You can wait outside, sweetheart. Someone will be out to collect the delivery." The words hung in the chilled air, sharp and ugly. "Wait outside." Serafina's expression didn't change. Her posture remained straight, her gaze unwavering. She didn't flinch. She simply watched as Marcus Thorne and his team swiped their key cards and stepped into the private elevator, their laughter echoing faintly as the polished brass doors slid shut. Brenda, the receptionist, smirked, vindicated. "You heard him," she said, a note of triumph in her voice. "Outside." Serafina turned her head slowly, her dark eyes meeting Brenda's. For the first time, a flicker of something unreadable, something cold and powerful, danced in their depths. The smirk on Brenda's face faltered. Serafina didn't move toward the door. Instead, she reached into her portfolio and pulled out her phone. She dialed a single number. "Benjamin," she said, her voice low and clear. "I'm in the lobby. The stage is set perfectly. Bring Mr. Allister down and alert security. Tell them the 40th floor is about to have a change in occupancy. Yes, effective immediately." She hung up. A quiet ping came from the other bank of elevators. The doors opened, revealing a distinguished-looking older gentleman, James Allister, the outgoing chairman of the board, and a sharp, hawk-eyed man in a lawyer's suit, Benjamin Carter, her general counsel. Serafina walked over to them. "Gentlemen," she said calmly, "shall we go upstairs?" Together they walked to the executive elevator. Serafina produced a black, unmarked key card, an all-access, level 1 override card, and swiped it. The panel beeped green. The doors slid open. As she stepped inside, she glanced back at Brenda, whose face had turned a sickly pale white. The receptionist's jaw was hanging open, her eyes wide with dawning, catastrophic horror. The elevator doors closed, and they began their ascent to the 40th floor. The reckoning was about to begin. The 40th floor executive boardroom at Origin Innovations was Marcus Thorne's sanctuary. The sprawling mahogany table, the plush leather chairs, the panoramic view of the city skyline. It was all an affirmation of his power. He sat at the head of the table, a position he had unofficially claimed, basking in the deference of his management team. Cynthia Vance, the head of HR, was nervously shuffling papers. David Brown, the CFO, was smugly reviewing quarterly reports on his tablet. Robert Gallagher, the head of R&D, was droning on about a minor setback in a product pipeline. It was business as usual. "So the beta test for Project Chimera showed a slight variance in thermal resistance," Robert was saying, "but it's well within acceptable parameters. Nothing to worry about." "Acceptable is the enemy of excellence, Robert," Marcus said loftily, not really listening. He was still mentally chuckling about the woman in the lobby. The sheer audacity. He was about to share an amusing anecdote with his team when the boardroom doors opened. He looked up, expecting his executive assistant with coffee. Instead, he saw her, the woman from the lobby, Dr. Serafina Hayes. She wasn't alone. Flanking her were James Allister, the chairman of the board whom everyone believed was on a golf holiday in Scotland, and a man whose sharp suit and sharper eyes screamed lawyer. A confused silence fell over the room. The managers exchanged puzzled glances. Marcus Thorne's condescending smile froze on his face. "Allister," Marcus exclaimed, rising to his feet with a forced bonhomie. "What a surprise. I thought you were enjoying the old course. And who is—" This, he gestured vaguely at Serafina, his tone still laced with the assumption that she was an assistant or some junior functionary Alistair had brought along. James Alistair, a man who had seen generations of corporate sharks come and go, looked at Marcus with an expression of profound disappointment. He didn't speak. He simply stepped aside, giving the floor to Serafina. Serafina walked to the head of the table, directly opposite Marcus. She placed her leather portfolio down with a soft, definitive thud. The sound seemed to echo in the silent room. She surveyed the faces around the table, her gaze lingering for a moment on each one. Cynthia, who avoided her eyes, David, who looked annoyed at the interruption, and Robert, who just seemed confused. Finally, her eyes locked with Marcus Thorne's. "Good morning," she said. Her voice was not loud, but it cut through the silence with the clarity of a diamond blade. "For those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Dr. Serafina Hayes." She paused, letting the name sink in. It meant nothing to them. Yet. As of 8 a.m. yesterday, my investment firm, Phoenix Equity Partners, completed its acquisition of a controlling 68% stake in Origin Innovations. A collective gasp went through the room. David Brown, the CFO, went pale. He knew about a potential acquisition, but the deal wasn't supposed to close for another month, and the buyer's identity was a closely guarded secret. Serafina continued, her voice remaining perfectly level. "The board convened in an emergency session last night. Mr. Alistair has graciously tendered his resignation as chairman, and the board has unanimously appointed me as the new chairperson and chief executive officer of this company." The silence that followed was so complete, so absolute, that the hum of the city 40 floors below seemed to roar into the vacuum. Marcus Thorne's face cycled through a series of emotions: shock, disbelief, confusion, and finally a dawning, sickening dread. He looked at Alistair for confirmation, and the old man simply gave a slow, somber nod. Marcus's world tilted on its axis. He stared at Serafina, the woman he had told to wait outside with the couriers, the woman he had called sweetheart. She was his boss. She owned him. "You," he stammered, his bravado evaporating like mist. "You're the head of Phoenix?" "I am," Serafina confirmed, "and for the last hour I have been conducting my first official act as CEO, a cultural audit, starting in the lobby." Her eyes swept the room again, cold and appraising. "Mr. Brown," she said, her focus shifting to the CFO, "my preliminary audit team found discrepancies in the Q3 expense reports, specifically a $1.2 million slush fund disguised as consulting fees. I imagine the SEC will be very interested in discussing that with you. Your access to company systems has been revoked. Security will escort you out." David Brown's jaw dropped. He opened his mouth to protest, but the words wouldn't come. 2 uniformed security guards entered the room as if on cue and stood behind his chair. "Ms. Vance," Serafina said, turning to the head of HR, "Origin is currently facing 17 pending HR complaints for gender discrimination and racial bias, all of which you have marked as unsubstantiated without conducting a single formal investigation. You have failed in your most basic duty to protect the employees of this company. Consider your position terminated." Cynthia Vance began to tremble, her face ashen. "Mr. Gallagher," Serafina's gaze fell upon the R&D head, "your department has not produced a single innovative, market-leading patent in 5 years. Instead, you've been reskinning old technology and presenting it as new. Project Chimera isn't suffering from a slight variance. It has a catastrophic design flaw that you have been actively concealing from the board for 6 months. You have not only stagnated this company's growth, you have exposed it to immense legal and financial liability. You are fired." Robert Gallagher slumped in his chair, as if he had been physically struck. Finally, her gaze returned to Marcus Thorne. He stood there, frozen, his face a mask of utter humiliation. "And you, Mr. Thorne," Serafina said, her voice dropping slightly, becoming more personal, more piercing. "You, in one brief, unguarded moment, showed me everything I need to know about the culture you fostered here. A culture of arrogance, exclusion, and disrespect. A culture where a person's worth is judged by their gender, their race, or the price of their suit. A culture that looks at a black woman and sees a courier. She took a step toward him. You asked me to wait outside. You were wrong. It is you who will be waiting outside the industry, because I will make it my personal mission to ensure that your reputation for bigotry and incompetence precedes you wherever you may go. She gestured to the door. Your position as Chief Operating Officer is terminated, effective immediately. Your things will be boxed up and sent to you. Leave your keycard and company phone on the table. You have 60 seconds to vacate this room. Marcus Thorne stared at her, his face contorted in a snarl of impotent rage. You can't do this, he hissed. I built this division. The board will hear about this. Benjamin Carter, the lawyer, finally spoke, his voice dry as dust. Mr. Thorne, you are an at-will employee, and for the record, the board has heard about this. They approved this decision unanimously in the same vote that appointed Dr. Hayes. If you are not out of this room in 30 seconds, these security officers will be authorized to remove you for trespassing. The fight drained out of Marcus. Defeated, he slowly unclipped his keycard from his belt and placed it on the mahogany table. He pulled his phone from his pocket and set it beside the card. The silence was deafening. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the boardroom, a ghost haunting the ruins of his own kingdom. One by one, the others followed, escorted by security. Within 5 minutes, the room was empty, save for Serafina, Alistair, and Benjamin. Serafina stood at the head of the table, looking out at the city skyline. It was not a look of triumph. It was a look of grim determination. The execution was over, but the war for the soul of Origin Innovations had just begun. The news of the 40th floor massacre spread through Origin's offices like a digital wildfire. Whispers turned to Slack messages. Slack messages turned to hushed gatherings by the coffee machines. By noon, the entire company was buzzing with a mixture of fear, shock, and for some, a deeply buried spark of hope. The Titans had fallen. An unknown entity, a black woman no one had ever heard of, was now in charge. The 40th floor itself was eerily quiet. The opulent offices of Thorne, Brown, Vance, and Gallagher stood empty, their doors ajar. It felt like a ghost ship, a Marie Celeste of the corporate world. Serafina Hayes had not moved into the sprawling CEO suite. Instead, she had commandeered the now empty boardroom, turning it into a temporary command center. Her first calls were not to investors or the press, but to the heads of IT and facilities. I want all executive-level passwords and access frozen. Immediately, she commanded, her voice crisp and authoritative. Change the locks on the entire 40th floor. And I want a full mirrored backup of the servers from the last 72 hours sent to a secure off-site location. No one, and I mean no one, accesses those files without my direct authorization. Her lawyer, Benjamin Carter, worked silently on a laptop in the corner, drafting severance agreements that were brutal in their minimalism. No golden parachutes, only what was legally required, and fielding frantic calls from the fired executive's lawyers. By 2 p.m., Serafina was ready for her next move. She sent out a company-wide email with a single subject line, mandatory all-hands meeting. 3 p.m., main auditorium. The auditorium was packed. Employees from every department, from marketing interns to senior engineers, filed in, their faces a mixture of anxiety and morbid curiosity. They had heard the rumors, but they wanted to see the executioner for themselves. When Serafina walked onto the stage, a hush fell over the crowd. She wore the same simple gray pantsuit. She stood not behind the podium, but in front of it, creating a direct, unfiltered connection with the audience. There were no slides, no corporate platitudes projected on the screen behind her. There was only her. Good afternoon, she began, her voice resonating with a calm strength that seemed to settle the nervous energy in the room. My name is Dr. Serafina Hayes, and I am your new CEO. I know there are a lot of rumors flying around today, she continued. Let me be clear about what happened. This morning I terminated Marcus Thorne, David Brown, Cynthia Vance, and Robert Gallagher. This was not a decision made lightly, but it was a decision that was absolute and necessary. She paused, letting her eyes scan the faces in the crowd. For too long, Origin has been a company coasting on its past glories. It has become a place where who you know is more important than what you know, where confidence is mistaken for competence, where dissent is silenced and mediocrity is rewarded. A place where a culture of exclusion has been allowed to fester, poisoning our potential and driving away our best and brightest. She saw heads nodding subtly in the audience. She knew she was hitting a nerve. "That ends today," she declared. "Today we begin a new chapter. I am not here to slash and burn. I am here to build. I am not interested in yesterday's politics. I am interested in tomorrow's innovations." "But I can't do it alone," she said, her tone shifting from authoritative to inclusive. "I need you. I need engineers with ideas that have been ignored. I need marketers with campaigns that were deemed too bold. I need the administrative staff who see the daily inefficiencies that the executives on the 40th floor were blind to." She then did something unexpected. She pointed to a young woman in the third row. "You, in the blue sweater. What's your name?" The woman, startled, stood up. Maya Washington. I'm a junior analyst in product development." "Maya Washington," Serafina repeated. "Tell me, what is the single biggest obstacle to you doing your best work at this company?" The entire auditorium held its breath. Putting an employee on the spot like this was a power play, but it felt different. It felt genuine. Maya, trembling slightly, found her voice. "Bureaucracy, ma'am. We have a great idea for a new composite material, but to even get a prototype budget, it has to go through 3 levels of approval. And Mr. Gallagher, the previous head of R&D, always said it wasn't a priority." Serafina nodded. "Thank you, Maya. My door will be open tomorrow at 9 a.m. I want a full presentation on that composite material on my desk. You're not presenting to a committee, you're presenting to me. If the idea is sound, you'll have your budget by noon." A wave of stunned silence, followed by a ripple of excited murmurs, spread through the crowd. This was not how things were done at Origin. "This is the new Origin," Serafina announced. "A meritocracy, a place where good ideas, not last names, determine your trajectory. It will be hard. There will be changes. We will have to be lean, agile, and honest with ourselves about our past failures. Some of you might be thinking about polishing your resumes right now," she said, her voice softening. "And I understand that. But I ask you to give me and this new vision a chance. Help me build a company we can all be proud to work for. A company that doesn't just innovate in its products, but in its principles." She finished her speech and simply said, "Thank you." No Q&A. She turned and walked off the stage. The auditorium was silent for a moment, and then it started. A smattering of applause from a few brave souls. Then more joined in, and soon the entire room was filled with thunderous, sustained applause. It wasn't just for her words, it was for the catharsis. It was the sound of a pressure valve being released after years of being tightened. As Serafina walked back towards the elevators, Maya Washington hurried to catch up with her. "Dr. Hayes," she said, breathless. "Thank you. No one has ever asked for my opinion like that before." Serafina stopped and gave Maya a small, genuine smile. "The best leaders don't give speeches, Maya. They ask questions. Be ready for 9 a.m. tomorrow. Don't disappoint me." As the elevator doors closed, Serafina let out a long, slow breath. The speech had been a success, a crucial first step. But she knew the truth. Words were easy. The real work, the dirty work, was just beginning. She had to untangle years of mismanagement, and she had a sinking feeling that the problems at Origin were far deeper and darker than just a toxic culture. The ghosts of the old regime still haunted these halls, and she was about to find out just how many skeletons were in their closets. The week following the purge was a whirlwind of controlled chaos. Dr. Serafina Hayes, true to her word, transformed Origin into a hive of activity. She held marathon meetings not with VPs, but with project leads, engineers, and administrative staff. She walked the floors asking questions, listening, and observing. She implemented an anonymous digital suggestion box that received over 500 submissions in its first 24 hours, ranging from complaints about the quality of the coffee to detailed exposés on departmental waste. Maya Washington, the junior analyst, had arrived at 9 a.m. sharp, her presentation meticulously prepared. Serafina had listened intently, asked 3 incisive questions that cut to the heart of the project's viability, and by 11:45 a.m. had personally signed off on the prototype budget. The message ricocheted through the company. The new CEO meant business. But while Serafina was publicly rebuilding morale and charting a new course, she and Benjamin Carter were privately engaged in a corporate archaeological dig. Armed with the mirrored servers and full administrative access, they began sifting through the digital remains of the previous administration. The first discoveries were depressingly predictable. David Brown's slush fund was just the tip of the iceberg. They found inflated contracts awarded to companies owned by his brother-in-law, lavish business trips to five-star resorts with no discernible business purpose, and a creative accounting system designed to hide losses and inflate profits. It was a classic case of a fox guarding the henhouse. Cynthia Vance's HR files were even more damning. They found the original, unedited versions of the discrimination complaints. One, from a highly qualified female engineer, detailed months of harassment from her male supervisor. Vance's official report concluded the engineer was being overly sensitive. The engineer had resigned 2 weeks later. Another complaint from a black sales manager about being consistently passed over for promotion in favor of less qualified white colleagues was dismissed with a handwritten note in the margin from Marcus Thorne. Not a culture fit, but the truly terrifying discovery lay buried in Robert Gallagher's R&D archives, hidden in a password-protected subfolder labeled Legacy Issues. It concerned Project Chimera, the company's flagship product, a new heat-resistant polymer used in everything from consumer electronics to aerospace components. It was Origin's biggest moneymaker. Gallagher had told the board the thermal resistance variance was minor. The internal data told a different story. Under specific but not uncommon conditions of prolonged high temperature and moderate humidity, the polymer didn't just weaken, it became brittle, catastrophically brittle. The files contained simulation models showing component failure rates of over 30% under these conditions. "Ben, look at this," Serafina said, her voice grim. They were in the boardroom late one night, the city lights twinkling below them. She pointed to a memo on the screen. It was an email from a senior lab technician to Robert Gallagher, dated 8 months prior. It read, "Bob, the phase inversion issue is worse than we thought. I ran the stress tests again. We're looking at potential structural failure. We have to halt the production rollout and inform the clients." Gallagher's reply was a single chilling line. "The rollout is proceeding. Bury these results. Consider this matter closed." Benjamin Carter read the exchange and swore under his breath. He knew, and he pushed it to market anyway. "He didn't just push it," Serafina said, her fingers flying across the keyboard, pulling up sales records. "They've already shipped over 2 million units to companies like Boeing, to medical device manufacturers, to automotive suppliers." The scale of the deception was staggering. This wasn't just about financial liability, it was about human lives. A failing component in a smartphone was an inconvenience. In an airplane's avionics system or a surgical robot, it was a potential disaster. "They were playing Russian roulette with public safety," Benjamin said, his face pale. "All to meet a quarterly earnings target." Serafina leaned back in her chair, the weight of her discovery pressing down on her. This changed everything. Her mission was no longer just about fixing a toxic company culture. It was about preventing a potential catastrophe. She now understood the real reason for the rot at Origin. It wasn't just arrogance and prejudice. It was a deep, corrosive corruption that prioritized profit above all else, even human life. "We have a ticking time bomb, Ben," she said softly. "And the old management didn't just build it. They lit the fuse and sold tickets to the explosion." Suddenly her phone buzzed. It was a Google alert she had set up for Origin Innovations and the names of the fired executives. The headline was from a well-known aggressive business journal, Chaos at Origin. Hostile new CEO guts management puts thousands of jobs at risk. Sources claim inexperience and woke agenda, driving tech giant into the ground. The article was a scathing attack, painting her as a reckless activist on a power trip. It was filled with anonymous quotes from concerned senior employees, lamenting the loss of their visionary leadership. "They're not going away quietly," Benjamin murmured, reading over her shoulder. "I didn't expect them to," Serafina replied. her eyes narrowing as she read a direct quote attributed to an insider source that was unmistakably Marcus Thorne's voice. "She has no idea how to run a company of this complexity. She's going to destroy everything we built." "He thinks he's trying to destroy my reputation," Serafina said, a cold fire in her eyes. "He has no idea what he's just started. He's not just fighting for his career anymore. He's fighting to keep himself out of prison." The battle for Origin had just escalated from a boardroom coup to a high-stakes war, and Serafina knew she had to act fast before the bomb they had discovered, and the one Thorne had just launched, both detonated. Marcus Thorne was not a man who accepted defeat. In his mind, he had not been fired for incompetence or bigotry. He had been usurped. He seethed with a potent cocktail of indignation and wounded pride. From the moment he had walked out of that boardroom, he had been plotting his revenge. His first move was to call Julian Croft. Croft was a journalist of the modern era, less concerned with objective truth and more with crafting compelling, clickable narratives. He and Marcus moved in the same privileged circles, their relationship built on a transactional exchange of gossip and insider tips. They met at an exclusive old money country club, a place so steeped in tradition and white male power that Serafina Hayes wouldn't have made it past the parking attendant. Over expensive scotch, Marcus spun his tale. "It was a corporate ambush, Julian," Marcus said, his voice a performance of beleaguered sincerity. "This woman, Hayes, she's an activist investor. Comes in with this agenda. She doesn't care about shareholder value or the company's legacy. She fired the entire team, decades of experience, gone in an instant, based on nothing more than a perceived slight. It's cancel culture come to the boardroom." He deliberately omitted the part about the slush fund, the HR violations, and his own condescending behavior. He framed the firings as an attack on the established order by an unqualified outsider. "She's in over her head," Marcus continued, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "I have friends still inside. Morale is at an all-time low. They're terrified. She's going to run the company into the ground, and good people, thousands of them, are going to lose their jobs." Julian Croft listened, his reporter's instincts tingling. The story was perfect. It had conflict, a powerful female protagonist, or antagonist, depending on the spin, and a timely angle on corporate politics and woke capitalism. It was a narrative that would resonate with a large, angry segment of the online readership. "Do your sources have any specifics?" Julian asked, pulling out a notepad. "Anything to show she's actively making bad decisions?" "I'll see what I can get you," Marcus promised, a predatory gleam in his eye. The resulting article was the opening salvo in Marcus's war of whispers. It was a masterpiece of innuendo and carefully selected half-truths. It didn't have to prove Serafina was incompetent. It just had to plant the seed of doubt. And it worked. The story was picked up by other outlets. Financial blogs began questioning the stability of Origin's new leadership. Industry analysts, spooked by the sudden management upheaval, placed a watch on Origin's stock. The company's share price, which had been stable, began to dip. Inside Origin, the article had its intended effect. The fear and uncertainty that Serafina had worked so hard to quell came bubbling back to the surface. Employees who had been optimistic now looked at each other with suspicion. Was she really a savior, or was she, as the article suggested, a reckless amateur who would sink the ship? Marcus pressed his advantage. He began systematically contacting mid-level managers and key engineers, people he had promoted, people who owed their careers to him. "John, it's Marcus," he'd say in a confidential tone. "Just checking in. I'm hearing worrying things. Is it true she's shelving Project Orion? That project is our future. This woman is going to cost you your career. But there are other options. My new venture, I'm putting the old team back together. We're going to build something better. There's a place for you if you're smart." It was a classic sabotage campaign. Poison the well internally while launching attacks externally. He was creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. By sowing chaos and doubt, he hoped to trigger an exodus of talent and a collapse in investor confidence, proving that Serafina was indeed unfit to lead. For Serafina, it was like fighting a phantom. Every day brought a new fire to extinguish. A key supplier would call, Spooked by the negative press, an institutional investor would demand a meeting to reassess their position. She found herself spending more time managing the perception of the company than managing the company itself. "He's bleeding us with 1,000 cuts," she told Benjamin one evening, gesturing to a screen filled with negative headlines. "While we're in here trying to defuse a nuclear bomb, he's out there convincing the world that the real problem is the color of my blazer." The pressure was immense. The employees were watching her. The board was watching her. The market was watching her. And all the while, the secret of Project Chimera tickered beneath it all, a silent countdown to a disaster that would make the current PR crisis feel like a minor inconvenience. "We need to get ahead of this," Benjamin advised. "We need to issue a statement, fight back, discredit him." Serafina shook her head. "No, that's what he wants. He wants to drag me into a public mud wrestling match. If I get distracted fighting his war of whispers, I'll lose the real war, the one that actually matters." She stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the endless stream of headlights on the streets below. "He thinks this is about him and me," she said, her voice quiet but filled with resolve. "He thinks this is about his ego. He still doesn't understand what's at stake." She turned back to Benjamin. "Forget the press. Forget Marcus Thorne for now. Our only priority is Project Chimera. We need a complete, unassailable audit of the material's failure points. We need to identify every single client who received a shipment, down to the last unit. And we need a plan, not just to recall the product, but to replace it with something that actually works." Her eyes locked on Maya Washington's proposal for the new composite material, which was sitting on her desk. A flicker of an idea, a bold and terrifying gamble, began to form in her mind. "Marcus wants to prove I'm going to destroy this company," Serafina said, a determined glint in her eye. "Fine, let him. He's so busy setting my house on fire, he won't notice that I'm about to blow up his entire world with the truth." The following 2 weeks were the most intense of Serafina Hayes' professional life. She operated on 4 hours of sleep a night, fueled by coffee and a relentless sense of purpose. While Marcus Thorne's media campaign raged outside, Serafina turned Origen into a sealed, focused unit dedicated to a single secret mission, confronting the Chimera crisis. She assembled a small, hand-picked task force. It included Maya Washington, whose deep knowledge of polymer science was now invaluable. A veteran logistics expert pulled from the warehouse division named Frank, who knew the company's distribution network better than anyone, and a handful of trusted engineers and data analysts who had been sidelined by the old regime. She made them sign ironclad non-disclosure agreements, sequestering them in a secured section of the R&D labs. She called them the Phoenix Team. Their first task was to confirm the flaw. Working day and night, Maya and the engineers replicated the failure conditions. The results were even worse than the hidden files suggested. The polymer didn't just become brittle, it sent out microscopic fractures under stress, a cancer spreading through the material just before it shattered. They filmed the tests, documenting every heartbreaking crack and splinter. Simultaneously, Frank and the data team worked through shipping manifests and client records, building a comprehensive database of every company that had received Chimera components. The list was a who's who of global industry: aerospace giants, medical tech startups, automotive safety system manufacturers. Each name on the list represented a potential catastrophe. "The exposure is over $3 billion in potential liability, not including punitive damages," Benjamin Carter reported grimly after reviewing the client list. "And that's if a recall happens before an incident. If something fails in the field, the company is finished. We're talking about corporate manslaughter." As the Phoenix team worked, Serafina fought to keep the rest of the company from imploding. Thorne's campaign was taking its toll. 2 senior VPs, loyalists from his era, resigned publicly, issuing statements to Julian Croft's journal about their lack of confidence in the new leadership. The stock dropped another 7%. Serafina knew she was on a knife's edge. She had to manage the impending public safety crisis, a financial crisis, and a crisis of confidence all at once. The easiest path would be to try and cover it up, just as Gallagher had. Issue a quiet product update, replace the components slowly, and pray nothing failed in the meantime. It would save the company's reputation and stock price in the short term. It was the path Marcus Thorne would have taken, But Serafina was not Marcus Thorne. "We're going public," she announced to Benjamin one evening. He stopped what he was doing and stared at her. "Serafina, do you understand what that means? The moment we admit there's a flaw, we open the floodgates. Lawsuits, a stock collapse, federal investigations. It could be a death blow." "It's the only way," she countered, her voice firm. "If we try to hide this, we are no better than them. The truth will come out eventually, and if it comes out after a catastrophe, we won't just be financially ruined, we will be morally bankrupt. We have to control the narrative. We have to be the ones to break the story." Her plan was audacious. It wasn't just about confessing the problem, it was about presenting the solution. For the past week, she had been secretly funneling a massive emergency budget to Maya's team. They weren't just testing the old material, they were fast-tracking the development of Maya's new composite, the one Gallagher had dismissed. It was theoretically stronger, more stable, and, crucially, immune to the phase inversion flaw. They were in a race against time to produce a viable, tested alternative. "We're not just going to announce a problem," Serafina explained to Benjamin. "We are going to announce a full, voluntary recall of every single Chimera component. We will take the financial hit, we will ground planes if we have to, and in the same breath we will announce that we have a superior, safer replacement material already in production. We will replace every faulty component at our own cost." It was an all-or-nothing gamble. It would cost the company hundreds of millions of dollars, potentially bankrupting it. But it was also the only ethical choice. "What about Thorne?" Benjamin asked. "This will be the 'I told you so' moment he's been waiting for. He'll paint this as the ultimate proof of your failure." A grim smile touched Serafina's lips. "Let him. He's about to find out what happens when you corner a phoenix. It doesn't die. It's reborn in fire." She scheduled a press conference for the following Friday. She didn't alert the board, her investors, or the employees. Only she, Benjamin, and the Phoenix team knew what was coming. The night before the press conference, Marcus Thorne felt a surge of triumph. An internal source, a disgruntled director in the sales department, had leaked him a memo about massive, unexplained expenditures in R&D. Marcus, assuming it was evidence of Serafina's reckless spending, immediately forwarded it to Julian Croft. "This is the kill shot, Julian," he wrote in the email. "She's burning through cash on vanity projects while the company burns. Publish this tomorrow morning. It's the end of her." Julian, smelling blood in the water, drafted his story, ready to publish it at 8 a.m., just an hour before Serafina's press conference was scheduled to begin. The pieces were all in place. Marcus Thorne was poised to deliver the final, fatal blow to Serafina's career. The world was about to see the definitive proof of her incompetence. He went to sleep that night a happy, vindicated man, completely unaware that he had just handed Serafina the very weapon she needed to ensure his utter annihilation. The eye of the storm was about to pass, and the fury that followed would be unimaginable. Friday morning broke with a palpable sense of doom. At 8 a.m., Julian Croft's article hit the web. The headline was brutal. Exclusive. CEO Serafina Hayes gambles Origin's future on secret vanity project amid stock plunge. The story, fed by Marcus Thorne's leak, detailed the reckless R&D spending, painting Serafina as a clueless leader, fiddling while her company burned. Origin's pre-market stock plummeted another 15%. Marcus Thorne, watching the numbers from his home office, poured himself a celebratory glass of champagne. He had won. At 9 a.m., Serafina Hayes walked to the podium in Origin's auditorium. The room was packed with journalists, industry analysts, and television crews, all drawn by the scent of corporate blood. They were expecting a resignation or a desperate defensive speech. They were not prepared for what they got. Serafina began without a preamble. "Good morning. I will not be taking questions until the end of my statement. 2 months ago, my firm acquired Origin Innovations. In the process of that transition, my team and I uncovered a deeply disturbing truth." She gestured to a large screen behind her. An internal Origin document appeared, the memo from the lab technician to Robert Gallagher, warning him about the catastrophic flaw in Project Chimera. "For the last 8 months," Serafina stated, her voice resonating with cold fury, Origin has been knowingly selling a dangerously defective product. Our flagship polymer, Project Chimera, used in aerospace, automotive, and medical applications, is prone to catastrophic failure. This fact was known and deliberately concealed by the previous management team, including former COO Marcus Thorne, who was CC'd on this very memo. Gasps rippled through the audience. On the screen, she displayed Gallagher's reply, "Bury these results." Then she displayed the email chain showing it had been forwarded to Marcus Thorne, who had replied with a single word, "Handled." The reporters began scribbling furiously. Julian Croft, sitting in the front row, felt a cold knot of dread form in his stomach. He had been playing. "This is not a story of incompetence," Serafina continued, her voice rising with righteous anger. "This is a story of corruption, a story of a management team that prioritized their bonuses over public safety." She then laid out the full, devastating scope of the crisis, listing the types of companies that had received the faulty parts. She played the videos from the Phoenix team's tests, showing the polymer shattering under stress. The room was silent, horrified. "As of this morning," she announced, "Origin is initiating a full, global, voluntary recall of every single component manufactured with the Chimera polymer. We are proactively contacting every client, and we are working with federal regulators to ensure this process is transparent and swift. The financial cost of this will be staggering, but it is nothing compared to the potential human cost of our past inaction." The stock ticker on the financial news channels, which were broadcasting live, showed Origin's stock entering a freefall. It was a corporate kamikaze mission. "But I did not come here today to just tell you that we are a broken company," she said, her tone shifting. "I came to tell you how we are going to fix it." This was the moment. She revealed the existence of Maya Washington's new composite, codenamed Project Phoenix. She explained that the reckless spending Julian Croft's article had exposed was, in fact, the emergency funding to fast-track the development and production of a safe, superior replacement. "Every client affected by the recall will receive the upgraded Phoenix components at no cost," she declared. "We are not just correcting a mistake. We are providing a better, safer solution. We will lose money, a lot of it, but we will regain something far more valuable, your trust." She ended her speech by looking directly into the main camera. "To our employees, our clients, and the public, I give you my word. The era of secrets and corruption at Origin is over. Today we choose integrity over profit. Today we are reborn." The aftermath was immediate and seismic. The karma for Marcus Thorne. The moment Serafina displayed his handled email, his fate was sealed. Julian Croft, realizing he had been used to push a false narrative and cover up a massive public safety scandal, turned on him with the fury of a betrayed journalist. Croft's follow-up article was a meticulous, brutal takedown of Thorne and the old guard, using the evidence Serafina had presented and adding his own research. Thorne's phone began ringing off the hook, not with job offers, but with calls from lawyers and federal investigators. He, along with Gallagher, Brown, and Vance, were named in a massive shareholder lawsuit and became the subjects of a federal investigation into corporate fraud and criminal negligence. His reputation wasn't just ruined, it was vaporized. He lost his fortune in legal fees and settlements, and the man who once sneered at a woman in a lobby found himself unemployable, a pariah in the industry he once ruled. The rebirth of Origin. The company's stock hit rock bottom, but then something remarkable happened. After the initial shock, the narrative began to shift. Serafina's radical transparency, her willingness to sacrifice short-term profit for long-term integrity, was seen not as weakness, but as incredible strength. Major clients, initially furious, were impressed by her proactive approach and the promise of a superior replacement product. The story changed from corrupt company sells faulty product to visionary new CEO saves company from corrupt former management. Within 3 months after the recall was well underway and the Phoenix composite began earning rave reviews, the stock began to climb back, slowly but surely. Talented engineers and executives, inspired by Serafina's leadership, began sending in their resumes. Maya Washington was promoted to Director of New Material Development. The culture of fear was replaced by a culture of innovation and accountability. Months later, Serafina Hayes walked through the bustling R&D labs. The air was filled with energy and collaboration. She saw employees of all backgrounds, genders, and ethnicities working together, their voices animated with passion. Oregon was smaller, leaner, and had scars from the battle, but it was stronger, healthier, and more ethical than it had ever been. She had not just fired a management team, she had performed a corporate soul transplant. Her victory wasn't the moment she fired Marcus Thorne. It was this, the quiet, productive hum of a company that had been given a second chance, a company that was finally worthy of its people. The story of Dr. Serafina Hayes and Origin Innovations is more than just a satisfying tale of karma. It's a powerful testament to the true meaning of leadership. It reminds us that real strength isn't found in arrogance or exclusion, but in integrity, courage, and the willingness to do the right thing, no matter how difficult. Serafina didn't just clean the house, she rebuilt the entire foundation on a bedrock of ethics and transparency. She faced a storm that would have destroyed most companies and sailed through it by choosing the hardest right over the easiest wrong. Her story serves as a crucial lesson in today's world, that the culture of a company and the character of its leaders is its most valuable asset. If this story of justice, resilience, and true leadership resonated with you, please take a moment to hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and make sure you subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell. We have many more powerful stories like this to share, and you won't want to miss them. Thank you for listening.